Hi, everyone. Welcome to A Word with Kelly Scott Reed. We are here today with Melissa Flores Anderson. She is a award-winning journalist from California, and frankly, an incredible, fabulous writer in all genres. Welcome, Melissa.
Hi, it's great to be here with you guys this morning. Actually, afternoon, I guess now. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're really excited to have you. We were talking on a few interviews about how we feel a lot like we are friends with the people that we interview, that we have posted in the press or published in the press. That we feel connected in like a friendship, even though we haven't spent any time together. And you've participated in the readings, and you've participated in the prompts, the cocktail hours.
Mhm.
So it just feels like this organic friendship that's kind of coming from this. So I'm really glad to actually speak with you and get to know you a little bit better for real, not just in the writing sphere.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it too. And I feel like the press has really created a community on Twitter, and then it's kind of flowing over into real life. So I really appreciate it. I love all the banter online that we have, and the writing prompts have been really fun. I think I started going to those at a time where I wasn't doing as much writing on my own because I was working on a revision of a longer piece. So it was kind of nice to have those chances to kind of write some short stuff. And it's always something that like is unexpected that comes out of it. So I still have those little pieces stored away to kind of work on and revise at some point. I don't know when, but they're they're in the hopper somewhere.
That's awesome. Are you working on anything right now that you're kind of got your teeth into, sunk your teeth into, that is getting ready to come out?
Well, I always have a bunch of things that I'm working on. One of the things that I'm not quite sure if I'm going to do another revision on is I worked on a full length novel manuscript. It's called The Irish Months. I worked on it for about a year and a half. I just started querying it. I don't know how that's going. I got some feedback about possibly making it a little more commercial, and so I'm not sure. I'm kind of thinking it might be more literary fiction. And other than that, I do have a couple short stories coming out. So kind of related to the story of the Irish Month, which is about an American girl who goes to Ireland and studies abroad and falls for an Irish guy, and then they're separated by time and distance for a while, and then reconnected in an unexpected way. I have a short story called Irishmen coming out in Lavinia Press in June. And then I also have a story, an interactive Twine story coming out with Voice Based Zine when they release their third issue. And that one is kind of a story slash playlist. So it's called 25 Men, and there's like a little blurb about a different person, and each one has a song link to a song
Mm.
that like is about that person and it reminds the main character of that guy or that time in her life. So that is
Dude,
coming
that
out. I don't
sounds
know when,
amazing.
but
Oh, I'm so
that I'm
excited.
really excited about that one. It was my first time trying to use Twine, and I love it. And Katie Naylor is doing like amazing things with Void Space Press. I've had one thing in there already, and she just is pushing me to think about different ways to tell stories.
Mm.
So yeah, that those are kind of some of the things that are on the hopper. And I have like 42 partially finished short stories that at some point I will finish and submit somewhere. So
Okay, I am like so excited for that. It's kind of right up my alley. I am beyond excited. Okay, very cool. Well, so having said that, when, or actually, if you could describe a time in your life when you realized that language had power.
So I'm gonna talk about when I was in grad school. I think I was 24. I went to South Africa to do an internship as part of my journalism program. And when I was there, it was 2004. It was 10 years since apartheid had ended. I was there with a bunch of other American students, and we learned a lot about the history in South Africa. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there was some pretty deep segregation. There was a lot of a history of violence and racism there. And one of the things that happened during apartheid was that people were classified as either black or white, and anybody in between was colored. And so I just remember going to an event that I was covering. It was about some like new tech rollout, which was a big thing in 2005 because there's not a lot of technology there. And there were these two guys who I think they were of Malaysian descent. But one of them came up to me and he's like, "Oh, you're colored." And I was like, "No, I'm from America and I'm half white and I'm half Mexican." And he's like, "Oh, well, here that means that you're colored because you're not white or African." And I think for me, it was very interesting to see that even though it had been 10 years since apartheid had ended, that people still were kind of living in that phase, like using that terminology was just the norm there. And I think it struck me in that coming from a place, I live in the Bay Area, it's very diverse. I'd never really had anyone say that to me before. But being there, it just kind of it struck me that sometimes how you see yourself or how you feel about yourself is not how other people are going to see you. And you are always going to be kind of fighting against that in the world. And so for me, I think I have always felt like I had to work harder, whether it was, getting into grad school or like getting a job. And I I understand that now in a way that I don't think I did when I was younger. And I don't think it's right, but I think it's something that happens. And I think language can really shape the way that we kind of allow these institutions and these, I guess, the history of these things to continue. So I think everything that we're doing when we're writing about these things, and just writing in general, can really change the world. So I know that sounds cliche, but
No, not at all.
I
And I
really
and
feel that way.
I was thinking as you were talking about how resistant people are to language changing. Um, Apartheid ended, you said 10 years prior, but the languaging was still in circulation. And we're seeing that now with different issues,
Mm-hmm.
where our language is so ingrained through our culture that when it's time to let it go, people get really angry
Mm-hmm.
about it. But it's constantly changing, it's constantly evolving. New words created. We joke at work because I'm always complaining because I don't like certain words. I can't remember a couple of them that were just, they feel like poor English to me and they're just not. Language changes, but I resist it so much. And I think a lot of us do. Um, but for, different, like, oh, I don't look the word ain't in the dictionary. I don't care. But what I'm saying is that some people don't understand how ain't is in the dictionary, even though it's poor English. But English is always, all
Mm-hmm.
languages are always evolving. We're very resistant to the change.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, that was wonderful example. Thanks for sharing that experience. Um,
Thank you.
I'm the worst. I have to see my questions to ask them correctly. I'm the worst interviewer in the whole world. They're new. I'll get them down. Um, what do you feel are the most important elements of good writing?
Okay. So I think for me, one of the big things is having a character that I connect with and resonate with. It doesn't have to be someone who shares my life experience, but I feel like I really need to kind of see a connection or something about that character has to draw me in. I don't read a lot of experimental fiction. I would say most of what I read for fun, and it may not be fun for other people, but I read a lot of literary fiction. I like a lot of short stories. So like things that have a really strong character in them, and I like a narrative arc. So I kind of like to see, someone kind of making some progress on something. And then the other thing I would say, I spent a lot of years working as an editor at a small town newspaper. I edited a lot of stuff, a lot of stories. And then even when I switched jobs, I was working in higher ed in strategic communications for a while. And now I work for the city of San Jose and as a public information officer, or public information rep. And I do a lot of copy editing. So I like clean writing. So um, if it's going to get to the point quickly, like I don't like a lot of superfluous language that's not really adding to the story. So like I like things to be really well edited in terms of grammar and spelling. I can't, like, if something's really riddled with errors, I cannot read it. And I know that's my background as an editor. I can't turn off the editor's mind. It's always going all the time. And it drives my family crazy because I'm always like, that's not right. Like, let me show you how to do this.
I
But
love
my friends
that.
love me because I'm really good at editing cover letters and resumes and like helping them with things like that. So,
Yes, and there, and honestly, I like a concise story. I like a concise to the point. And then there are some times, like you said, when it really carries the story forward, when it sets a tone or a vibe, that's when I really love
mhm.
detail. All right. Does writing energize or drain you?
So writing 100% energizes me. And when I have a really good idea or something, it'll keep me up at night until I get it down. So I know for the Irish Months, the novel length story that I've been working on, I wrote a bunch of that in the middle of the night. I think it was the first summer of the pandemic, and we had a bunch of wildfires in California. And I was not able to sleep. We were having all these alerts about possible evacuations, and we never got evacuated in my area, but I had friends and family in the Bay Area who were. We were kind of on edge, and I couldn't sleep. And so I got up and I just started writing. And then I got this idea. So the Irish Month started out as a short story told from three different perspectives, and it was just like a 10,000, maybe 10,000 words. And then I kept writing and it got longer. And I was like, well, maybe it's a novella. Maybe it's going to be a novella. And then at some point, I got this idea that clicked. And I was like, no, this is a novel and this is where it's going. And I probably stayed up for like 2 months just writing in the middle of the night until I got the first draft down. And then
Mm.
it was shit because I didn't know what I was doing. And I just like writing everything. And so then it's been through a lot of revisions now. I've probably cut and added about 50,000 words to it. So I think at one point it was 120,000 words and I cut it down. And right now it's sitting about 88,000 words. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. It still needs some work, I think, but it was a labor of love. And I feel that way with short stories sometimes too. Like I'll have an idea and I'll write it down. And then some of them will just like, they keep kind of coming up and I can't focus on anything else until I get at least like the first draft down. Um, so yeah, definitely energizes me. But on the flip side of that is that when my day job is really exhausting, or if there's a lot going on at home that is distracting, I don't always have the energy to write. So I know we were working from home for about 2.5 years, and then my office, we started going back into the office a few days a week, and I have an hour commute one way and an hour commute home. And so on those days, I'm just kind of drained. And then I think also I'm an introvert, so being in the office all day with other people also kind of wears me out. So I'm right now I'm still trying to find that balance of like trying to have time to write and the energy to write. And I'm lucky because I have a supportive spouse, and my husband gives me time to write. He helps with our son, and then my parents are local, so they also help with him. So like right now, they're my son is at my parents' house so that I can do this interview uninterrupted, and my husband's at Guitar Center getting guitar lessons or something.
Oh, very cool. Now you said you're not living far from where you grew up, right? Am I?
Yeah, so I live in my hometown. I'm from Gilroy, California, and it's actually a setting in a lot of my writing, and some of my creative nonfiction. So I grew up here. I went to college and graduate school in Southern California. So I lived down in the LA area for a total of about 6 years, and then I've lived in the Bay Area for most of the rest of it. And we moved down to Gilroy from Santa Clara when my son was 6 months old to be closer to family. So it was a good trade off. It's a long commute for us to work, but it's good to be close to family.
It must have felt good to be able to stay home a little bit during the pandemic. I mean, that had to be such a huge difference in terms of energy level and how much you expend
Mm-hmm.
just commuting.
Yeah.
Where we live, everything's 5 minutes away. We have no traffic. I'd say the longest it takes me to get anywhere is to like Lake Ontario, which is about a 35-minute drive,
Yeah, I'm so jealous.
maybe.
But yeah, I
Sure.
think that's part of why I was able to start writing so much was because I had that extra energy being at home, and I had and also we couldn't go anywhere. Like we were in shelter in place and we had a young child, so we were really careful about where we went. So it's like, well, if I'm not doing anything, I can sit down on my laptop and write. And then I
Yeah.
also had a friend who started encouraging me to submit stories. So she told me about Submittable, which I didn't know about. And then I started looking for journals on Twitter, which is actually how I discovered you guys, was seeing Twitter posts. And so it's been a fun journey so far. And it's only been since I think I submitted my first stories at the end of 2020. So I really only kind of seriously started doing this creative writing in the last year or so.
That's awesome. Okay. Wow. What momentum you have.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. There is just definitely a momentum, I think, even with the press and with what Tiffany has done. Once you boom out of the cannon, it just starts to go when the energy's positive, when it's the right thing, so everything
Mm-hmm.
follows right behind it. It's awesome. So how did you begin writing in the first place? Like, what I mean, obviously you've been writing almost, yeah, your whole life. What
Mm-hmm.
inspired you to start?
So I don't know when I really started writing. I was just talking to a friend about this the other day. When I was in sixth grade, our sixth grade teacher, her name was Mrs. Carlson. And at the end of the year, before we graduated and went to middle school, she wrote out these certificates, and it was her prediction for what each of us was going to be when we grew up. And mine was that I was going to be a published author. So I must have been writing at that point, but my kind of earliest memories of writing was like a VFW essay contest, and I think I won like $25. I don't remember what the prompt was anymore. But I really started writing in earnest. I think it was in middle school, and a lot of it was I was super shy. I was really introverted. And I think writing was a way to kind of process all those feelings and say the things that I wasn't able to say out loud. So I wrote a lot in journals, and I wrote a lot of poetry, like really bad poetry about every boy I ever had a crush on. Like that was a lot of what I wrote in middle school and then the beginning of high school. And then in high school, I got involved in our art literary magazine. And that was fun to kind of connect with other people who were interested in writing in the same way that I was. And then I started doing more short story writings. And the short story writing was, it was kind of outside of that, like, oh, I'm just going to write a poem about a boy I have a crush on. It was more about, I think I wrote one story that was kind of inspired by my grandfather talking about his experience in World War II. And there was another one where it's about a couple high school students who were in interracial relationships. So an American girl dating someone who was came from Vietnam as a refugee. So I started writing more. I feel like they're deeper stories. And being on the art literary magazine was really fun. I got a bunch of little stories and poems published. I don't think they're very good anymore. But I did a lot of writing then. And then I also took creative writing twice. So it's kind of a funny story. So I took creative writing in summer school, and I loved it. It was super fun. And then some of my friends were taking creative writing in the fall, and it was an elective. So we were supposed to be able to take it more than once. And I applied to take it, and my guidance counselor was like, no, you already took it. You don't get to take it again. And my guidance counselor and I did not get along. He forgot to mail in my reference letters for college. He was a mess.
Right.
So I don't know. He just had it out for me. I'm sure I'm wrong, but that's how I felt. So he's like, no, you cannot take creative writing twice. And I was like, but it's a different teacher, like it's different assignments. And then after he said, he's like, no, there's no more space in the class. You can't do it. Two of my friends, like one of my friends, he did it just to piss me off, I think, but he got admission to go to the class. And then he's like, oh, I got into Mrs. Ainsley's creative writing class that you couldn't get into. So then my mom heard about that, and my mom went down to the school, and she's like, excuse me, you said there wasn't room in this class. Um, and then you admitted another student, and then the guidance counselor was like, yeah, okay, fine, like she can take it.
Oh my
Um, and so I ended up taking creative writing again. And I actually found some of my writing assignments from that class. Just recently, I found a bunch of stuff in my parents' garage, and it was really funny. Like I had to do a portfolio and it had to be themed, and my theme was regret. And I was like 16. I was like, what did I regret when I was 16?
Everything.
Apparently so. So it was really fun to kind of see that stuff. And then I kind of stepped back from the writing when I went to college. I think I was nervous about actually taking that leap of doing it because trying to write for a living is really vulnerable, and putting things out there is really vulnerable. So I ended up being a psychology major. And then when I went to grad school, I was a journalism major. And so I kind of came back to the writing, but in a different way. I love being a journalist. It was amazing. I feel like when I was a journalist, I was telling other people's stories and giving a voice to people who didn't always have one. I worked for a really small newspaper in San Benito County. It's just over the border from Santa Clara. It's not too far from where I live now. And I loved what I did. I feel like it was really meaningful work. But now I feel like what I'm doing is telling my own stories, and it's really hard to be that vulnerable. Like I know the first couple of times I submitted things and got rejections, it just feels so personal and heart wrenching. But now I kind of get it. Like there's a lot of subjectivity out there. It's about finding the right fit and finding the right people. And I think my writing has improved since I first started submitting about a year and a half ago. And now I have kind of a community of people who will kind of read and give me feedback. And so that's really fun too. It's kind of like getting to know other people and read their stuff and kind of interacting with them. So I don't know if that answered the question, but
yeah, it really does. And I think that part of what you're saying about like building community, sometimes when you're writing or you're starting off writing, at least I felt that way. I always felt I was the only one doing it. Without a Twitter community, I don't know anybody. I have friends who write, but it's very personal. It's not like it's stuff they're sharing much of. It's just that they do journals and they write their own poetry. But to have people really actively trying to write and communicate their work and their vision to others is a very new experience for me until fairly recently. So Tiffany introduced me to this magical land that I am now involved in that I absolutely love. But that also inspires me to write more, because I was one of those writers. I was a creative writer major in college. And I love to write. I do songs, I do it dribs and drabs, but without that support, that other underlying like foundation that can come underneath you with other writers, being positive feedback, help. I've had some people offer to just read something for me, which is incredible. Not just the person who goes, "That's nice, dear." Like my mom always says, "Oh, Kelly, that's wonderful." But yeah, okay, but I like people's expertise. So
yeah, I think that's one thing that really helped me move forward. Was I have a friend, Julia Halpern Jackson. She is a creative writer. We worked together at San Jose State. And she was the one who really encouraged me to start submitting stuff. She's like, "Your stuff is good. You should try to get it out there." And she was the one who really pushed me to do it. And she kind of gave me one of my first big breaks too. She runs this literary arts group called Play on Words San Jose. And it's kind of this cool thing where you can submit a piece of writing and the pieces that are selected get assigned to an actor. So it's like a reading, but you don't have to read your own work. You get to watch somebody else kind of like read it. And so she picked one of my pieces called Not a Gardener, which was a piece inspired by my grandfather. So that was like my first big break and the first thing that I got paid for writing. And then they were featured to promote that show on another with another arts group, and they picked my piece for that too. So I got to talk about my writing process with them, and I got paid for that. So last year I made $137 on writing. So not quite my day job, but it was really fun. It was kind of like it was a boost, I think, to my confidence for that. So
that's awesome. We just have one more question. Who are your literary heroes?
So I thought about this a lot. I read a lot of different types of authors, but I think one person that I kind of really like the work that he's doing now, and I read a lot of the stuff that he did when he was younger. Roddy Doyle is an Irish author, and I read a bunch of his stuff when I was younger. He actually, I don't know if you know the movie The Commitments.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
He wrote the book that the movie is based on. And so I really like his writing because he writes about kind of this like the working class people in Dublin. They're kind of like gritty characters sometimes. They're like down to earth. And they're not like highbrow. And I really like the way that he really captures the experience that they have. And a lot of his stuff that I read when I was younger is kind of funny, it's quirky. And then his most recent stuff has actually become a little bit more serious. So I actually have a prop right here. This one of his recent novels called Love. I think it's backwards on your screen, but it's actually about two sort of like 60 something year old Irish men who are they're very reserved, but it's about their lifelong friendship and kind of they get together for beer and they're kind of thinking back on the past. And so I really like to see the arc of his career, that he's gone from kind of writing these like fun stuff like The Commitments to more serious stuff. And then yeah, I just really love his writing. He's a Booker Prize winner, and I think that's kind of the British equivalent of the Pulitzer Prize. And everything that he's written, it's just I have enjoyed. It's really good. And I think I would say other literary heroes. Katie, I mentioned already, Katie Naylor, who started Void Space Zine. I just love that she created such a unique venue. It's all interactive. I know I wanted to submit to her first issue, but I was like, I don't know how to do something interactive. And then I saw some of the work that she had in issue 1, and I was like, oh well, I can do something that's like a create your own adventure. And I had this idea about talking about some health issue that I'd had, where I had gone to the doctor a bunch of times over like a 10-year period with the same issue, and every time it was a different diagnosis, and it took like 10 years before they finally got it right. And so I had that idea for the story, and when I started thinking about it through this idea of a create your own adventure, it's kind of like, well, what would have happened if I'd gone to the doctor and my last name wasn't Flores and I was white? What would have happened if I'd gone to the doctor and I was wealthy? What would have happened if I'd gone to the doctor and I was a man? So I started thinking about that. And so that's how The Patient Pushes Back came together. And so yeah, I just love that she's doing something so unique and so different. And it pushed me outside of my normal writing kind of genre. And it was the first creative nonfiction I think that I wrote. I have had a couple things published since then, but it was the first thing that I wrote. And so, yeah, I think I would put her in that category as well.
That is so awesome. And I have to say, the reason that we're sitting here in this little interview today is inspired by Katie Naylor, a
Oh,
conversation
really?
her and I were having back and forth about something. And I said, oh, I want to interview you or something, because she's obviously a super interesting human being. And so, yeah, let's do it, kind of thing. So Katie was one of the first interviews we did. So, and is absolutely doing incredibly inspiring work. So that is exciting. Congratulations. That's very cool. Very cool. Well, this has been really great. I really appreciate you doing this and to kind of keep getting to know people. Do you have anything you want to say in parting? Any sage words of advice that you want to give folks?
I think just find your people, because I think, like you said, Kelly, I was kind of writing on my own. I had some short stories that I'd written. I had this like almost full length novel, and it was just like stuff that it's like, well, I'll just save it on my Google Drive forever. And then, like I said, my friend Julia encouraged me to start submitting. And then from there, it just kind of grew. I found you guys. I found other people on Twitter. I've got some critique partners that I work with. I'm part of a writing group now. And so now I have people that I can, bounce ideas off of and share, early drafts if I want to. And then just reading other people's stuff. Like, I'm blown away by some of the stuff that other people write, because they write in a way that I can't even imagine. And so I love having that community. So I say, find your people.
Yeah, I love that. Find your people. Thank you so much. We've really enjoyed having you. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And thank you so much for supporting the press the way you do. It really means a lot.
Oh, thank you guys. I'm glad to be here. And I can't wait until AWP 2023.